9 a.m.
Okay. Speaking of brains not warming up. All right, guys. Welcome back. Welcome back, everyone, to episode 4. Episode 4 of Product Champs are still weekly. I can't believe we've actually done this every week. Are still
pulled
weekly.
it off.
We've 4 weeks in a row, which is amazing given everything. But our weekly chat about product, about life, about careers, about everything we want to talk about. I'm DZ, PM at LinkedIn.
I'm Avi, PM at YouTube.
Oh, you wanted us to?
Yeah. I mean, I thought.
Ahmad, go ahead, Ahmad. Go ahead.
By all means.
Ahmad, PM at a firm.
Okay.
And I'm Samir. I work at Pinterest.
For our. So, by the way, just let's talk about the pod for 2 minutes before we actually talk about the topic, which is, I think we have something like 50 to 100 subscribers across these different things. So
yeah, and almost all of them are on our old team.
Totally, 100%.
I was gonna say, are we gonna do the whole like subscribe and hit the bell?
No. We would
never say like, subscribe and hit the bell.
No.
But we want people to like, subscribe.
But if they happen to, if they happen to do it.
No pandering, guys. No.
Subscribe and then
we're not
the
doing
bell.
That. Also, I did not get this email about wearing a black t-shirt. I didn't know.
That's
because you're a leader, DZ.
All right,
follow you.
We don't tell you what to do.
I was trying to make a joke. And a point, which is, even though there's like 50 to 100, which take it for what it is, you can think of this many different ways. There are like 10 super fans. Right. And I know there's 10 super fans because after every pod, I get like an email from them with like detailed notes. I'm like, wow, this guy was.
They must like you more than they like me.
No. I think Samir gets the same, right? Samir, like,
I get a lot. I get feedback.
Avi, do you get any? Because I'm
getting no.
We get 0. So clearly, we know who the favorites are.
It's all right. If the super fans could give Ahmad and I some attention, that'd be great.
Fair enough.
But we would never tell anyone to like, subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notifications.
No.
But if they were to do that, that would be great.
It's on their own fruition. Yes.
Yeah.
So my point being, even though we're early, even though we have however many subscribers it is, I'm still loving it. I still really enjoy this and
bootstrapping the podcast.
Totally. And just one last point before we jump in. I heard this quote a long time ago from the guy that does This American Life, whose name I can't remember. I mean, you probably know this guy.
Ira Glass.
Okay, yes. And he made the point that most people, when they start creating content, right, they get stuck because their taste in the content and what they create is so different. They create crap and their taste is great. And his point was the only way to create great content is to create a lot of content. So here we are, episode number 4. Sorry, that was a long intro. Episode number 4. So for this episode, we thought we'd do something a little bit different, a little bit break from previous episodes. By the way, just quick TLDR, last episode we talked about what are great problems. It was actually very good. I went back and listened to it. You should listen to it if you're listening to this. This episode, we wanted to cover a topic that we, the 4 of us, probably get asked more than everything else combined, right? If I look at my emails and pings and whatever from people I don't know about product, the number one question I get is, how do I get a product job? Right. And sometimes it doesn't come to us. The question is sometimes not phrased as, how do I get a product job? Sometimes it's phrased as, I'd like to learn more about product, ... How do I get a product job? But nonetheless, it is, for a lot of people out there, it is the question on their mind. It's the thing they're trying to aspire to. So,
and just for everyone's general information, the second most common question DZ gets asked is, where do you buy all these cool clothes and accessories that you always dress?
I only get that from you guys. Okay.
Can we monetize those? Can we have it like so you can click on DZ's shirt and buy them?
We totally. Where's the YouTube monetization crew when you need them?
The next t-shirt you buy 100 for our 100 listeners, and then we're going to sell them on the next podcast.
I would literally do this. Yes. If you guys like J. Crew Factory, you're going to like what I have to offer you.
Shop the DZ look.
All right, on with the content.
Okay. So the question du jour is, how do you get your first product job? But before we let's do it our style. Let's do it our way. And what I mean by that is, let's get to that question by answering one other question first, which is, how did we get our own product job? Right? I think we all came into product different ways. I actually don't know exactly, by the way. So this is going to be new for me. I don't know exactly how you guys got your first product gig. And by the way, when I mean first product gig, I mean your first job where you had the title product manager and you were actually doing product manager work. You know what I mean? There's lots of things where you can do the work and not have the title. There's lots of jobs where you have the title, you're not actually a product manager. But like the first time you actually were a product manager title. So let's talk about that first, and then we'll get into the how do you do it now.
So two things before we hand off to Supreme Leader Samir, who, by the way, I believe the story is he was selling pizzas.
Oh, is that right?
He's delivering pizzas or something.
Oh, you know the story.
My first job out of college was selling pizzas.
Yeah. So he was selling pizzas, and then someone came up to him on the street and was like, "You'd be a good PM."
No,
something like
that part's not true.
He'll tell you the whole story. But I think both Samir and I fit in this bucket where, technically speaking, our first PM job was at Microsoft, for me, it was a Microsoft flavor. So it was technically a program manager, which is the official PM.
Exactly. That's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. Okay.
No,
right,
everyone.
Samir,
I mean, everyone in the Valley knows that at Microsoft, product managers are program managers. Samir, how did you land your first product program manager job?
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I after my gig at the pizza call center, which I learned a lot from, by the way, which was my first job out of college. I had a job at Microsoft. So I was waiting for my job at Microsoft to start, and in the interim,
take us. You applied to it straight out of school?
Yeah. So I applied for a PM internship.
Okay.
In university, and was rejected. Like I didn't even get a chance. Like I didn't even get an interview. They just didn't call me back. I was studying engineering in school, and I joined Microsoft as a software development engineer in test. So I was writing code, but I was writing test code, and I was writing it for low level Windows kernel stuff. So it was very exciting at the time. And after I graduated, I went back to my team and I was a software development engineer in test for the Windows tablet PC team, actually. This is before iPads and iPhones and everything else. So I started off basically as an engineer, writing code. And I actually got my first PM job by talking to PMs that I knew, and basically just bugging them until they told me about openings on their team that I could go and interview for. So
these are friends at Microsoft.
These are friends at Microsoft. Okay. So across from me was the Bing building. I knew a few PMs at Bing. It was a very exciting space. Like Microsoft was at that time still box software that you would buy, released every year. I was working on like Windows 7 tablet PC, edition. When I was an intern, it was like, good Lord, I think it was like XP tablet PC, something. But I would talk to my friends who were PMs at Bing and found out that there was an entirely different type of work, which was program management. And it was, in a space very different from mine, online search, like online services, search, et cetera. And both of those aspects fascinated me. And I actually knew nothing about the sort of online search world. The thing though was I did a little bit of what you described, which is I was kind of doing PM work without the title in my role at some point. Because I was leading the Windows Touch, I guess the health of the product from all the different scenarios, like how to touch work on applications, how to touch work on the main desktop UI. There's a bunch of things I was doing. And as I was going through more and more of this, I realized that I was talking to PMs like 80% of the time. And I really liked that type of work. And so that's what got me interested in this. And then the follow-up was, well, let me just talk to friends of mine who are PMs and see if I could, interview for a job. And then basically they were nice enough to tell me about openings that happened, and then used a little bit of their social capital to get me into the place. And so I'm very thankful for that. And that's how it started.
Yeah. I mean, there's so I feel like there's like 12 different things that are very learnable from your experience, Samir. Like I'll just name two of them, and we'll do a round robin. We'll come back. Or we'll do each of our stories, and we'll come back.
Yeah.
But like the two that stand out to me are, one, you were just in a very target-rich environment. Like you placed yourself in a place where there are a lot of PM jobs, right? Like if you were in the Midwest working for an insurance company, no friends, there's no building across the street with a bunch of PMs, right? No talking to PMs, right?
100%.
And the second thing you did, which I suspect we'll find a lot of commonality for all of us, is like you started doing the work without a title.
Yeah.
And you learned a little bit of the lingo, the muscles, you started, getting familiar. And so when you were looking then formally or, socially, you had a little bit, it wasn't just like, hey, please give me a job. It was like, you could talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I love it. I mean, we could stop the podcast right there. I think that might be the answer, but let's hear everyone else's story and see what else we can learn from this.
So full, just one thing to note there is that besides an internship where he's writing test code and him delivering pizzas, the only job Samir has had has been being a PM. The entire career. Yeah. He's been a PM.
So for two of us, that's true, right? I mean, for two of you guys,
for me as well. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do those two first. Let's hear your story about it.
Yeah. So, which, one thing I was going to say, and I don't think Samir knows this, but like, I look at Samir's career as a sort of benchmark for what my life could look like if I continue to excel.
Oh, and come on now.
My goal is to smoke this guy by the time.
Exactly.
What are you?
Benchmark. He means the lower,
Yes.
The floor. Yes. I understand that. You always want to beat the benchmark. I get it.
That's right.
Yeah. But at least he's using me for something. Yeah,
that's right. That's exactly right. He's like, look at this guy. Okay. All right. Ahmad, tell us. Tell us how you got this. How you got it.
So I, unlike Samir, got accepted into the PM internship.
Beating me already. This is amazing. Yeah.
So that's why I could see my career being more promising. But
Ahmad's answer to getting a PM job is you just don't get one. Like why are we talking about this? Like,
to be honest, all jokes aside, I got my PM internship honestly 60-70% luck, and I'll explain why. I think I knew what a PM was. I didn't really know what a PM was. I mean, like the stereotypical, like you manage a project or you're doing tasks and timelines is like, that's what my conception of a PM was. And I was standing in line for Zynga in the career fair. It's a true story. And I am interviewing for like software engineering interviews. So I show up to this career fair. Right? I got my tuxedo on, or like my suit, because I'm stupid. Because I'm stupid, and I'm holding this like I'm holding my stack of resumes, and I'm waiting in line, and this guy comes up to me and approaches me, and he's dressed super casual. I thought he was another person, another student, and he's just shooting the shit with me. He's like, hey, why are you in line for Zynga? Like, what is so fascinating about Zynga that makes you wait in line? And he was just like drilling me on all these questions, and I was having a very candid conversation with him. And I was like, I think this whole thing is ridiculous. Like, there's no way these people are going to remember me. There's no way any of these people are going to be remembered. Like, why are we even I was just like having a very meta conversation, like thinking this person's nobody. Turns out that guy's a recruiter for a division that was at Microsoft that was sold to Ericsson called Media Room. And basically it was like Microsoft launched like a IPTV service, set-top box thing. There's a lot of ex-Media Room people even from in like YouTube ads and elsewhere. But anyway, that's besides the point. So I'm standing in line, and we're having a conversation, and he's like, hey, I think you have a CS degree, you have a business degree, you hold a good conversation. Seems like you have good insights on how people work. Like, you should consider interviewing for a PM role. And I was like, yeah, sure. And so then he set me up for an interview, and the next, like, I chatted, I did the interview. I chatted with like a manager. That manager like really loved me, and I got to go be an intern where my manager set it up where it's basically me and like 5 other engineering interns, and we were basically responsible for an intern project for the summer. So like basically it's like, Ahmad, here's the general theme. by the end of the summer, you guys need to launch something. And like, that's sort of the goal. So I had like a real 0 to 1, like, and I loved it. Right. Like, I mean, like when you have an PM internship like that, you're just like, I thought I was like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. This is it. And by the way, like that guy that I met at the Career Fair, the recruiter, he's still one of my best friends. And his little brother is my best man. So, but anyway, that's a story for another day.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Yeah. So that's how I got into being a PM.
This is the least generalizable story.
Yeah, no. My story. That's why I said 70% luck. You know what I mean?
No, like your story is
Actually,
like
luck's
how
the
do you
big
get it-
point. Luck's the big point, right?
Yeah, luck's
totally, that's a good
like
point.
I literally was just standing in line and this guy approached me. You know what I mean? Like,
I would. I will. So yes, luck is a big point. But like the other way to tell your story is like the way to get a PM job is just to be a mod. You know, like if you're cool like a mod, like this shit happens. It doesn't. It just.
I think the takeaway is a non-actionable takeaway because, of course, many of us have tried to be as cool as a mod, and that's not really actionable.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the non-actionable takeaway is that luck plays an outsized role in a lot of these things.
100%.
And by the way, it's not like you're either lucky or you're not, and it's a one-time thing. It's a keep trying until luck, happens. Basically,
I think that's right. I'll also say like another takeaway for me is Ahmad's extremely good at building relationships. Like here's a guy who we met and is literally one of his best friends still today. So like my observation of Ahmad is that he's consistently good at building like genuine relationships, and they continue to serve him well over and over again.
Yeah.
And I think this is one example of that.
I mean, that's a great point.
Wow, thank you
Yeah.
guys. I appreciate that.
You turned luck into building relationships, and I think you saw the insight
Yeah.
there. That's actually really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, Avi, thank you for spinning that. I appreciate that.
Friday evening, got
Friday
to
night,
feel
get
good.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Avi,
by the way, for folks who
no,
don't
I'm
know,
not
this is a late night Friday night show. We're doing this late night now. So
yeah, late, early. We're here for each other and the pod and our 50 subscribers and our 10 super fans.
Well,
here for you
after
guys.
people like, subscribe, and hit the radio, whatever, the bell icon, we'll have more.
We need way more than like and subscribe to this.
We're expecting exponential growth.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. All right, Avi.
All right.
Tell us your story.
My story probably makes the least sense out of anybody's here.
I don't wait.
And
Well,
maybe
just hold your
not.
horses. Hold your
So
horses.
we'll see. So I stumbled into being a PM. But in retrospect, it makes a little bit of sense, right? So I think in retrospect, I realized that what I'm good at, I think, is I'm good at building teams to do things. And early on, like in high school and in college, I was kind of an AV nerd. So loved like film and TV, and was like always trying to put together some sort of like short film or like TV show. In college, I ran the television station, and eventually like really loved it. And like, the television station where I went was known for the Windows screensaver, where at night, because that was the only content they had, it was run off a Windows computer. They hadn't made anything in many years. And so people would play a drinking game where like you'd wait until the Windows screensaver like went to the top right corner and drink when it was in your corner.
Oh my God.
And so I came and I was like, let's change this. And like by the time I was done, we were making like a news show and like a friend style show and like a talent show. And like, so I enjoyed this, right? Which was like, let's take something that's not working and make it work. And like, how do we get people to rally around this? And like, how do we set a vision and like execute on that vision? Like, how do we actually break it down into small pieces? And eventually a friend was like, you're pretty good at this. You seem to enjoy this. Have you considered going out to Hollywood? And I honestly hadn't. Like, I never really thought about it. My family isn't from the US. Like, we didn't know anybody west of the Mississippi. And I decided to try it out. So I went out to Hollywood one summer, enjoyed it, got an internship, went out a second summer, got another internship at a bigger production company, and eventually ended up going to film school at USC for film producing. Came out, worked in the entertainment industry, worked at production companies, worked at film studios, and liked it enough. I think there are some things like the chase of finding a new idea I really, really enjoyed. The film industry was changing. Less people were seeing movies, fewer films were getting made. And I found that like the chase that I loved and the curiosity that I really enjoyed was becoming less and less. As like, every movie had to become a Marvel movie, I found myself less and less interested, and also frankly saw like less and less career prospects, because as fewer movies were getting made, there are less and less jobs to go around. And eventually got to the point where I was working at the live action studios at Disney and decided like very scarily that I wanted to change careers. So, like I wanted to do something different and had to go back to kind of first principles to decide what I wanted to do. And what I realized is that what I liked about the film industry was curiosity. I liked that I got to pursue, I'm a curious person, and I got to like look at lots of different ideas and kind of, you know, the same way that you would evaluate a startup, you know, evaluate ideas and like, should these be made into movies or TV shows, and really, really enjoyed that process. But as I went to like, you know, kind of figure out what my next step was, tech seemed like a really appealing area, but went to different, you know, interviewed at different companies, and they'd be like, what do you do? And I was like, well, I'm really good at finding ideas and reading scripts and like developing things. And they're like, we don't do that. I'm sorry. Like we, you know, we know nothing of that. And eventually like had a couple of chats, and somebody gave me really good insight that was like, you literally have nothing to lose. Like you can literally go and volunteer your time, and go like work, like go find a team within Disney, right? There has to be somebody at Disney like doing something that like interests you. You can literally go like volunteer your time with them, like work for free. Just go find something you want to do and like put yourself in a position where you're actually doing that. And was lucky enough to find a team at Disney that was a research and development team that was trying to create what was called the creative genome. They were trying to tag all the creative attributes of pieces of content. So like if you could understand a piece of content's DNA, could you, for instance, help Disney decide like what they should buy or shouldn't buy? So if you could like go into every scene and tag like, what is a character feeling? What is a character doing? How's the scene? Like what's the motivations in this scene? And so it was a really interesting position where I knew enough on the creative side that I could bring value to the table, but I kind of set myself up so I could learn the product side and the business side of things that I had no idea about. And they gave me kind of my first chance and helped build that team, helped build that product. And eventually the team became a place in Disney where Disney wanted to be disrupted before it got disrupted externally, which by definition turned us into PMs. We were out looking for problems within Disney that we could then go and solve. And our job is to take those problems from 0 to 1. And once we got to 1, to hand them off to operational teams. So to like build a portfolio of problems, try to solve those problems. Most of them would not be solved. Most of them would not work, but like 1 out of every 5 would. And when 1 worked, hand it off to an operational team. And that became my first product role. So like all of those same skills I recognized at first, like building teams to do things, like being curious, like I was perfectly positioned in this role to like actually bring those to fruition. I know. Sorry, that was a long.
I was fascinated. There's like a movie script in here.
Yeah, that was great.
I'm trying to like tease out. I mean, just one thing that stuck out to me as you were describing it was, I feel like one thing that's, you know, useful from your experience, Avi, was your willingness to be vulnerable and sort of go back to like what you call first principles, but, you know, go back to a fairly vulnerable state, right? Where, you know, you're ostensibly sacrificing what you thought you were going to do, but you were just kind of open to it and not wedded to the thing you had been doing, right? That to me is you know, along with some of the other stuff we talked about earlier, is going to be key, I think, as we boil down some ideas here.
Yeah, I think the few things that stood out to me, Abby, were like, I think the main idea that stood out to me was sort of like nearest neighbor, because if you think about it, the nearest neighbor role to someone who's doing what you're doing in the film industry was of like finding ideas, assembling a crew, developing and producing it, launching it, is a PM with different jargon, right? So that's like
exactly.
The nearest neighbor. And then the second nearest neighbor part of your story was that your first role was in something where you kind of knew, like the problem was a nearest neighbor. Like you kind of knew half of it, and it's like, you know, tit for tat. I give you this part, you give me this part, I give you the creative, whatever, you know, talent that I have and expertise that I have, and I learn the product side of it. So the sort of two nearest neighbor sort of instances there.
And that I think that's so true. That's often the advice I give people when they ask me this question, right? And oftentimes it's like, hey, I'm doing something else, but I'd like to be doing product. And my advice is often like, can you do product where you're at, right? Like, can you find a team and literally just go volunteer 20% of your time and go help them build a product, right? Or go learn how to build a product.
Mhm.
Somehow get product into your title or into something you launched, and like find your nearest neighbor, like leverage what you have.
Yeah. Actually, that's,
I think that's probably good advice for any the 10 super fans that we have that don't like me and Avi. Hopefully you can send Avi a note this week, because that's the most
Yeah, that's
applicable
all I
thing.
that's
ask.
part of it. Actually, it's,
That's like-
I think you actually captured my story, just to be, I'll go through mine quick, because I want us to like boil some of these ideas further. But I'll share two things real quick. So my first career out of college was actually consulting. It was very data driven. It was very analytical. It was actually a lot of fun. We worked with retailers and banks. It was stuff you could tell your parents about. You could describe this to your mom, and she could go to Target and you could say this thing. And so the reason I bring this up is because I actually built my first product. My title wasn't product. I was a consultant, working with CFOs and CMOs and such. But I remember we did this project once for Chili's, the restaurant chain, right? And we were trying to help them redesign their menu. Their menu had lots of issues, meaning people weren't coming and eating their food. And so the key insight that we came up with was the way they were ranking their menu items, right? You get in this room, it's the CEO and the president and their entire executive staff, and they go through and literally rank their menu and say, what do we want to keep? What do we want to kill, right? And the way they were doing it was primarily based off of sales and margin. How many do we sell and how much do we make? And we said, that's a little crazy. Like, the thing you should be optimizing for is, when people eat this, do they come back and eat it again? Right? Like that's literally your business.
Yeah.
Like you could, sell them a really high margin steak or fish, which is very high margin, and they hate it and they never come back. And like, yes, it looks good on paper, right? So
this is a great PM story, by the way. This is
and by the way,
phenomenal. This is absolutely.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying,
how am I just hearing this story? This is
I don't
great.
know.
Oh yeah.
This is amazing.
Also, wait. Fish is really high margin. At every restaurant, the fish costs too much, and it's like a little square.
Yeah, but think about Chili's, right? You have 1,000.
I just want to say it's not fair. That's
It may
why
not
I
be
don't
fair,
order the fish.
but nobody likes it, right? If you're in Ohio and your fish is like 3 days old, it's not helping you, right? Anyway, so long story short, I'll try to make this fast. So we go through and we're kind of quantitative consultants, quantitative analysts, and we go through and we score. We basically have their point of sales, right? So they give us their point of sales, their credit card data. They give us their credit card data, so we can see menu item credit card number over time, right? And we can basically calculate, when you eat menu item X, what's the likelihood you come back in 30 days, right? And you can score every menu item, and we score every menu item, and we have this. It's not a product, right? It's a slide deck. Avi would know. Like it's a literal slide deck. There's like a projector. We're showing on slides, and we go through this, and we're going through all the burgers. And there's this one burger that was like low volume but very high propensity. Like it had like 3x the likelihood to come back than all the other burgers, but had very low volume. And we get to that slide, and the CEO, Wyman Roberts, the CEO, kind of old, craggly-haired white dude, gets up, slams him, and says, "I knew it." It was like his like pet product. He was like, "I knew it," because he had thought the burger was really good, but they had killed it because it was low volume, right? And instead, what they should be doing is promoting it, because people. Yeah. Okay, long story short, so we took that analysis and turned it into a little, more or less a little dashboard, right? For any, you could run this for any restaurant chain. It's kind of not, Chili specific. And so that was my first experience building product. I still wasn't a product manager. I did that. I just
want to clap for that story, because as Ahmad said,
it's a fucking incredible story. That's
a
a great PM story.
Yeah.
Wrong success metrics turned to good. Like it's all there.
It's all there.
The textbook stuff it's all in there. It's amazing.
Well, there's some parallels here. So the story gets better. So I end this. So the reason I exit consulting is because at a certain level you become sales, which is a weird thing, right? We should talk about this someday for our pod, by the way. Like, in a lot of roles, as you become more senior, one day your job changes in a fundamental way. And in client services, the problem is you're doing the work, it's analysis, you're helping these companies grow. One day, all you do is BD and sales. So I left that role, and I came into tech because I was living in SF at the time. I was like, this is early 2010s, right? The market's just incredible. I feel like I'm missing out. So I'm like, I should be doing this tech thing. I don't have the vocabulary, right? I don't know the words. I don't know what these job titles are. I finally figured out I could give myself a job as a data scientist, right? Because the work is very analytical. You do a lot of SQL. I was like, I know SQL. So I joined LinkedIn to do data science. I'm partnered with a guy who runs marketing. The guy gets fired, or not fired. His team gets reorganized. He gets fired. And so after the first year, I didn't have a business partner. And so my manager were like, well, we can basically kind of what you said, Avi, we can kind of do whatever the hell we want. And we always felt like, and many people felt this way, that like LinkedIn should be able to help you more with careers, right? LinkedIn should be able to tell you what are your options for the future versus like you're kind of like, guessing. And it turned out to be true. So we built this little program, again in SQL, with a very crappy front end called Future You. And it took all the employees of LinkedIn and forecasted them by 5 years to say, Ahmad, you could become, and it'll give you a list of names, right, of people that have your heritage, your background, something about you, but 5 years more time, right? And we could tune it so that it would be this like nice, delightful, credible comment. Like your manager, like telling you could become your manager is not very interesting, right? Telling you could be president of the US is like not very believable, right? Like we tuned it so you could get this like nice combination of things. And in that experience, I actually interviewed a lot of people to ask them like, how are you thinking about your career and how are you progressing? So now I was really starting to pick up these, these skills and vocabulary. By the way, I had applied to Google before LinkedIn, right? Because like you're in SF, you should apply to Google. Didn't get the job, mainly because I didn't even know how to structure these questions that they were giving me, right? And then so the second time I applied to Google, so by the end of that experience, I knew I wanted to become a PM. I had the vocabulary. I had launched this product internally within LinkedIn. We had rolled it out as part of learning and development for all the employees. And so the second time I went to interview at Google, basically to your point, Ahmad, I just told them the story about launching Future You. And that was basically interview. I mean, there were some other interview questions, and Google has a very structured interview process, and it's scored. But I could tell in each of my interviews that when I told that story about building Future You and thinking through the users and interviewing the users and thinking from their perspective and sort of managing the data so it has the right kind of emotional reaction. By the time I told the story, like the interview was over, right? And then they had a question they had to ask me anyways.
But by the way, I just want to say, DJ, you touched on something that I was going to bring up abstractly, but I think you nailed a concrete use case of it, which is, I think a core part of landing a PM job is having a story about building a product, having a story about solving a user problem. And
yeah,
I remember how bad I was at telling this story the first few times I interviewed. Even after like I had my first PM job, even after I was a PM at Bing, like I didn't, because I hadn't interviewed a second time or whatever, I didn't realize that I was just basically talking details as opposed to talking problems, pain points, solutions, trends, etc.
Yep.
And that's just, I think you're absolutely right. There's always a point in an interview where you basically win them over, and and if you are at that point, everything else is gravy. You still have to nail it, but it's gravy, and that's essential for PM. So thank you for sharing that example. I think you illustrated it very well.
No, I mean, yes, I actually, that was not the point I was making, but I'm glad it came out that way. The point I thought I was making, by the way, was kind of around Avi's story more, which was I did the work. I mean, Samir, you said this earlier too, was the way I got my first PM job was I did the work before I got the job, right? And I did the work, it was very similar. I did the work adjacent to what I was doing, right? I did the work in a very rich environment. So LinkedIn had strong PMs. I partnered with a PM. I learned from her a lot. I picked up the language. Inadvertently, I sort of had a great story to tell. I mean, stories don't have to be manufactured, I guess another way to put it, right? The best story is just a genuine human story. I remember in one of the interviews, I mentioned this comment to one of the people that I had showed the results. So, this is the dashboard. Again, all my products are dashboards. You guys know this by now. So I showed this dashboard to this PMM at LinkedIn, and he got really sad, right? He was like just distraught. I was like, everyone else was like very, the most reaction was like, oh, this is very interesting. Oh, I didn't know, there's this kind of like this delight factor, right? And he was just like crushed. And I was like, you are really bummed out. Like what, I mean, did I get this? Was this wrong? And he said, no, this is exactly right. So he was a PMM, and it was like head of product marketing, CMO, CMO at a startup, this sort of thing. And what he said was, in my heart, I've always wanted to go to public policy, right? And I was like, there is nothing on your background about public. There's zero, right? There's a zero shred of evidence of your history that is public policy. So like, if that's your desire, you're not manifesting it. And true to his word, the guy quit 6 months later and went off and joined the White House, like, I don't know, digital something group.
You got this guy to quit?
I did. I mean, I don't know if I was I don't know if I was the instigator, but like literally, I kept in touch with the guy afterwards. It was that once, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is
don't do it, Ahmad.
Don't do it.
I know what you're going to say, and don't say anything.
Wait,
I was going to say this should be our first guest. This guy that quit his job should be our first guest.
I knew he was going to go down the. Let's see who DZ gets to
Track him down.
We'll wrap this
We're
up.
going to track him down, and we're going to.
Yeah.
The doing the work,
sorry.
right? Doing the work and having these experiences. I think the second time around interviewing on Google, I don't think it was that hard actually, because these stories were genuine and I had the muscles and I had done some of this work.
I'll add on two things to what you guys have said in the past few minutes, which is I think you have to be very good at telling your own story. I think there are two stories you have to tell. One is you have to get very good at telling your own story, right? And that's a skill that I think you get over after interviewing a bunch of times. And then you have to get very good at telling one of these stories, which is about a time when you built a product or your first product. But I think the key to those stories is to show that you were able to create impact.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to find one of these adjacent roles, right? Something to do with like a little bit of extra time partnering with a product manager. It's not just to say I went and I partnered with that product manager, but while I did it, I created something that created impact. And if you're able to do that and you're able to put that on a resume, that's worth its weight in gold, I think.
Yeah.
Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that really highlighted, or the thing that was like the shining star in DZ's stories, were the fact that, there's this burger that actually turns out to be like the thing that was impactful, right? That was, boom, that's the impact. And then DZ also made a guy quit his job. And that was like,
like
so those are the two impact. Yeah. Like you like, oh, cool. Like, so something was a result. Like if you don't have that, I think at the end, it does sort of like fizzle.
I think you're right. It's this like insight, this novel insight, this like little nugget that you found that
it's the so what
changes the game.
You're kind of like teaching, right? Like you're like that person walks away being like, oh, I had no idea that like
right.
I was it was the first time I felt like I actually impacted a person's life. Like I don't know how much credit we should take here, but like I genuinely felt like that product made a difference in this dude's,
the burgers or the guy who quit his job.
Both. Okay, let's dig on a few of these topics. So I'll dig on one of mine, just to pick up some threads here now that we have the stories out, and then let's go around and hear some. Let's pick on this idea and pick some more ideas. One of the ideas I keep hearing you guys mentioning, I just want to give it a name, is that the world we live in today is largely permissionless. Like, I think the most frustrating thing for me when people come to me and say, hey, I want a product job. And I'm like, okay, what have you done about this? They're like, well, I'm talking to you. I'm like, well, that's not step one, right? Like, and usually when people ask me, how do I get a product gig? I almost always tell them exactly the same thing, which is, Avi, what you said, go build a product. You need no permission. It's 2021, right? You have amazing distribution. You have amazing scaffolding. And by the way, product, I don't think necessarily means an iOS app that goes out to 6 billion people, right? Yeah. A product like my first one with the burgers can be a spreadsheet, right? Except it's a spreadsheet that, has some real value for some set of humans. So my answer to almost everyone that comes to me when they're really green and all they really know is like they've heard about product managers and, they've sort of seen a little bit of the buzz, is like, great, I'm glad you're excited. Pick something you're interested in, pick something close to you, and actually put something out there. It could be a podcast. It could be, a dashboard. It could be whatever, but like go through the motions of figuring out what people need, coming up with a solution and shipping it, right? It doesn't have to be very good. I mean, I think the only thing, Avi, I would contradict what you said is like, for me at least, especially at more junior levels of PM roles, that story doesn't even have to be very good. Just the fact that you did it And then instead of like, I read all the books and now I'm here asking for a job, that distinguishing yourself from that pack by like actually doing something and failing outright, and then if you're smart, having insights about like why did it not work, right? That's actually a very good story. The failure stories are often fantastic if you actually learn something valuable. So the world is permissionless. Go get it.
I think there are two things to add on to the thing that you said, DZ, that have already been said. I just want to reiterate them. Is do everything that you just said. Go build the product, right? Like you don't need permission. But if you could do it in an environment where there's a strong PM culture and you're adjacent to a PM, who's going to teach you, it's just going to exponentially increase your chances 100%. Of becoming a PM.
Yes.
I'll say one thing really quickly, which is one thing that I found, which is silly and superficial, but is very helpful, is if you can somehow get the word product as a title on your resume. So like, if you can somehow go land a role where somebody's willing to call you product manager or product something, or it's even part of your title, it's going to be that much easier to move into product management. I think it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation, and it sounds superficial and sounds silly. And really, I think the better insight is you should be doing product work, not necessarily going after the product title. But if you're able to do both, and you're in an organization where you can do that, and you can sacrifice something like comp in order to get that title, or take on something temporary to get that title, it's sometimes well worth it.
I agree. I think the reason, by the way, just so people understand, I think the reason is because the first line of filtering is often a recruiter,
exactly,
who's not going to like dig into the like they're kind of pattern matching, right? Product.
They're trying to throw out as many resumes as possible.
Yeah, and so the ones without product, those get rejected first.
Straight out. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, so it sucks, but you're absolutely
right. A couple other things I wanted to talk about. So there's two things that we didn't talk about, but true to our promise from one of our previous episodes, the things we don't talk about are the things that you can read on Google or in books. But I just wanted to call them up because I mean we're doing this to help folks who are trying to break in, and people are at different stages in their educational path or career path. There's just a lot of PMs at, let's just call it the FANG companies, that went through a very traditional path of, grade school engineering or computer science, had an engineering job, went to a top tier business school, got an MBA, got recruited out of that MBA because of the prestige and the network in that program. And like they came in, typically, I think there's like, you start still relatively at the bottom in terms of junior level, but there's a lot of people that do that. I don't think the three of us wearing black today went to any prestigious Ivy League, schools or whatever, but can someone remind me?
Yeah, that's right. DZ talked about himself. Didn't even mention his school. DZ, where did you go?
Can someone remind me?
Yeah, this is the first podcast yet. Where that's happening.
Right. Avi, which school was it? That
it was somewhere in Cambridge.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Some technology. Oh, MIT, right. So anyway, that's our week.
Where is this story going?
But I think that was a tangent joke. But the main point is there's a lot of people that sort of follow a traditional path of engineering school, engineering job, MBA, PM. Okay, that's one. The second one was, two obvious, sort of tactical advice of like try to find a role with product in the title or whatever. I think another good advice is become really good at interviewing. At some point, you will need to do the interview, right?
Yes.
And I know people who are like, I'm not that good at interviewing.
I'm
Some
also
people
pretty garbage at it.
Are exceptional at it. I think there's all sorts of amazing resources online, blah, 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 blah. But like practice makes perfect. Also getting a friend who's really good at it to do mocks with you is a great idea. But like at some point, all these stories end with, or the second last step is got an interview and then, passed it and then got on. So I think become really good at interviews. And then the last point I wanted to make was, I think we all of us touched on this in some way, but I think in the case where you're doing something like, I think maybe it was you that mentioned, like, if you're going to do product, do where you already are, find a sponsor. Yeah. I think a lot of us know people that came from other ladders that became PMs that we were the sponsor for in many cases, right? Like they built a relationship with us, they helped us out, we helped them out. And if you build a sponsor that genuinely is invested in your success, maybe because they want to help you out, maybe they don't just give back. I think finding a sponsor increases your chances. So those sort of
not just in the sense of like they help you, but also learning, right? From
absolutely.
I'm not sorry.
Yeah. By the way, I was gonna say the one way that you can counter the don't have a product title on your resume is if you know someone at that company who can vouch and be like, no, I know the work that this guy did. He was doing PM work. That will get you in front of the recruiter. That's how you get that. So if you can find someone who's a sponsor who will also, give that to you, that goes on.
I mean, you guys bring up it's almost like there's 3 steps to this. If we're going to sort of, codify a little bit, right? There's one step just called doing the work. Actually, I don't think doing the work is, except for Ahmad, who arguably did the work as he's himself, right? But I think there is a step here called doing the work that's actually necessary for almost everyone. It's not sufficient, unfortunately, but you actually have to go do the work. You had to go learn, you had to go struggle. That first product is never easy. You're kind of, everything's kind of murky, right? One is called do the work. The second is called get to the interview, right? Like get through the filters, right? And there's, we have different techniques for this. You guys mentioned a few of them. Internal is one way to do it. Having product in your title is another way to do it. But like get to the interview. And the third one, Samir, you bring out, that's very correct, is you actually have to do well in the interview. Like I'm not sure there's a super high correlation actually in hindsight.
No.
But it is the way the world works. And if you don't understand, and by the way, product interviews differ by company. It almost differs by person. But but there are not that many flavors, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because in product interviews, it's like, if you had an unlimited budget and an eng team and blah blah blah, like how would you build an alarm clock for kids or whatever, right? So
yeah, exactly.
It's like that kind of stuff. And then when you
Google,
get the job,
right? That's a Google PM interview.
Right. And then when you get the job, I mean, it's often like, here's a backlog, no resources.
Yeah.
People want 3 different things.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're the PM of the save button. And it's like,
or the unsave button. That's
or
true.
the unsave button. That's right. That's a good story for some point. We should.
So I think TZ, your 3 steps are spot on. I think there's a bigger theme though, that is maybe like cheerful for our 10 super fans. And this is where I say something and you guys, send me messages. That it doesn't matter what you're like. It doesn't matter what you're currently doing. Don't tell yourself, oh, I can't be a PM because of XYZ. Because one of the things I hear is like, oh, I don't have a technical degree, I can't. And some of the best PMs, I know a lot of great PMs never had a CS degree. There's stories that we're not telling because, I know people who like were doing HR salaries before transitioning to PM. Like there's all sorts of crazy stories out there. You could do it.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point actually to dive into very quickly, which is like, you don't need a technical degree, but what do you need? So I think, when people ask me this question, oftentimes what I say is you don't need the technical degree. You do have to be able to have a conversation with your engineers. You do need to
not
have
just
like,
a conversation, right?
Not just a conversation.
Not like a friendly chit chat.
No, not a friendly chit chat, but like you have to be literate, right? You have to be able to understand how to make trade-offs with the technology you're building.
Yeah.
So how to, look at something they scoped and make sure it's accurate, how to weigh, should something be built, even if it's more expensive, just how to have these conversations. And I think to be able to do that, you do need some technical understanding, but not an engineering degree.
I'll take this a step further. I mean, I'll generalize a little bit, which is, and by the way, it's not just a technical degree, non-technical degree. It's not just, user intuition or non-user, if I had to sum up all these different things, it could be summed up into, you have to be able to ship a product.
Yeah.
And if that means you had to be able to scrap it together on a piece of paper in Google Docs or, a Google Sheet, that's okay. If you're just really good at convincing people like Ahmad, that's okay too. Like, it doesn't matter how you ship the product. That's actually irrelevant at the end of the day. But like somehow, some way, you've got to be able to get it out the door, get it in front of humans that are not you.
So Ahmad, it felt like it looked like you were going to say something. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, I think what DZ said is great. To add on to Avi's point, I think you need to be able to understand how the product works. Like you need to be able to, I don't know if you guys remember this. There's an eng director now, hey, old team, now you can play this game, guess, and there's an old eng director from Mountain View, who used to make PMs explain how their product worked. I don't know if you guys remember this, but it was a thing.
All of them. It's not.
Yeah, I guess it could also be
Keep
all
going,
of them.
keep going with the story,
you need to be able to, like, you need to understand all of the moving parts underneath.
Yes.
And you don't need to understand it on day one, but on day end, you need to understand it, right? Like
Yes.
you can't ship a product without understanding how it all works. And that's essentially what you need to be able to do with that technical degree.
This is a topic for a different episode, but I will prompt it by saying what DZ said is, of course, as always, generally right. But there's another component to this, which is, I think DZ said something like, it doesn't matter how you ship the product, just that you do. There is actually a lot about success in PM careers about how you ship a product. Ultimately, he is right about the fact that
but this is about getting your first job. No, my caveat here is like, what matters in getting your first job is demonstrating to the person that you can ship a product.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then after, if you're actually doing
By the
this
way,
as a
I think this is a good future topic, because once you're PM, how do you, demonstrate success, build your career, etc. But I think DZ is right, which is for the story you're telling to the person who's on the other side of the table interviewing you. Do you have a story? Did you ship a product? That's what you have to demonstrate, right?
That's, to be honest, that's at the end of the day, I mean, we've all interviewed hundreds of people at this point, thousands maybe. Like at the end of the day, what I'm really evaluating in an interview, whether it's like they ping me on LinkedIn or we're a formal interview, is like, can I imagine this guy getting it done or not? Right? I'm making that assessment of like, do they have the grit, tenacity, whatever, all these different skills you mentioned? Have they done it? So one way I know they can get done is because they've done it before. That's an easy one. But if they haven't done it before, what clues do I have about their resourcefulness, right, that tell me this person's going to figure it out? And if you come, so like there's this kind of like, I don't know how to put it, but I go back to this word permissionless. Like if you take this attitude that the world is permissionless, you can do whatever you want, and then you go act upon it, that attitude actually helps a lot in getting your first product gig, versus saying, oh, I need someone's permission to go do this work, and therefore until they say yes, I can't do it. Like there's a lot of people who sort of stay in that mindset, which I think blocks them from ever crossing this chasm.
I'm going to make my wife listen to this episode and make her hear that you said the world is permissionless and see what she says about it. I have to ask for permission for everything. So.
Okay. All right, this is good. All right, keep it on.
I know we're running close on time. There's a question that you texted, and I really do want to hear it, and I don't think it's going to be relevant in any other podcast episode. Okay. I want to know, what would everybody's job? If you're saving time for this, DZ, that's also okay. No. I want to know what everybody's job would be if they were not a PM, because it's something I've thought about a lot, actually. So I'm just curious. Okay. I'm curious what everybody else's answer is.
Yeah, let's go around. Well, so start with you. So Ahmad, so the question is, if you imagine you don't have your current job, you're not a PM, you're not on the track, so to speak, what would you want to go pursue right now?
And assuming PM is not in the future track, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah. So I've thought about this a lot with my fiance. It's a monthly conversation after I sell my $1 billion company and I'm retiring.
Totally right.
What do I want to do? And I think I've decided that I think I'd leave tech. I think I'd leave tech, and I would go be a detective. I think that's something that really interests me. Or I'd go like run for a very small office, like mayor of very small town.
I could totally see that second one. The first one, not so much, but the second one, yes.
You don't think I could figure you out, DZ?
No. Well, so this is a hypothetical world in which you're already fabulously wealthy. That's the world we're in.
No. I meant like, I was obviously the first part was a joke, but I think if I wasn't a PM, I think I'd want to do something where I'm chasing down answers.
And that's what you came up with, was like, I
came up with detective.
The prompt was not make fun of his answer. The prompt was let him say what he wants to be.
Yes.
Billionaire detective.
This is how DZ gets people to quit, by the way. This is what he does.
I just needle until they.
This is what he does.
All right. Okay. Detective Ahmad. I can see it. I can see it. AI.
Thank you.
Okay. Avi,
The, the AI.
what would you be if not a PM?
This is tough. Okay, I have two answers. One, a pilot. I would love to be a pilot. Like I really want to get my private pilot's license, and I think it'll be awesome. I think, and generally because like I think the concentration required to be a pilot, like the attention to detail, like the amount of things you have to think about while flying is something that just seems fascinating. The other thing is like having worked in like things that are not tangible for so long, like even though you're building something, you can't touch it. There's something about like creating actual things, like a mechanic or like a woodworker, where like you actually see what it is you're building and can touch it and look at it. That's very appealing. I don't know. Those are my two.
Yeah, you're like a creator of some sort. Like
Like a creator, like
yeah.
like it could be like building cars. It could be like my dad does woodworking, maybe woodworking, something like that, where you actually get to say like, okay, I put in 8 hours of work and half of a table exists.
Yeah. Okay. I buy it. I think I would do that too, by the way. Samir, you're next.
I would be a motivational speaker.
I
would just get up on stage and get people excited about their lives.
About their lives.
Don't you do this as a manager
serious,
though?
Right? Yeah.
Technically, this already falls within your
Well,
job.
Exactly. What
So
are you
I don't
doing
know
all
if it
day?
counts.
I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, you know, if I didn't have to do it in the context of a product, I would just do it for people in their lives. I get a lot of energy from helping people reach their full potential and getting excited about their life. So when you get excited, I get excited, right? It's me helping you realize your potential is something that really fascinates me, and I would be a motivational speaker if I wasn't a PM.
Guru Samir.
Yeah, totally. I can see this.
I would like that.
Yeah. By the way, I'll sign up for this. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I will, whenever you want to quit your job next.
Yeah.
Which
Not
I know
even quit.
is
Wait,
good.
who's like everything you guys have just mentioned is totally doable as a side hustle. I don't know
I
why.
can't be a
like,
detective on the side. Come
you
on.
could be a mayor
There's
of a small city.
no way.
You could be a mayor of a small city. By
Technically,
the way,
could be
I
a
found
mayor
out the
of
mayors of small cities actually have second jobs.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't
Yeah,
because they don't
It's
pay.
really
Yeah,
sad
of
because I
course.
thought it would be a great only job too. But if you were a billionaire mayor of a small city, you didn't have to have a second job. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go last, and then we'll bring it home. So I think I feel like I'm going in a totally different direction. You guys, like your guys' mind is like in post-retirement fantasy land. For me, I'll just tell you very candidly, if I wasn't doing this now, if I could wind back the clock, I would definitely be an engineer. Because I think again, it sort of goes back to my thesis about like being and operating in a permissionless way feels fantastic, right? And I feel like I feel like
DZ would be a terrible engineer for you to be a PM for. Like if
horrible.
you were an
I would be
engineer,
horrible.
I would never want to work with you.
No, exactly. That's my point. Like, look, we all know great engineers. No, we all know great engineers who are basically PMs already.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's also
and so
true.
like, imagine if you can be like, if you can run both product and engineering, you're effectively a GM, right? Which gives you that kind of autonomy and permissionless way to operate. Like you're never begging and borrowing. You're just, you know, you have to convince people, but you know, you're just operating. And again, I feel like I feel like there was a moment in time where I could have made that transition, except to be totally honest, and this sounds really stupid, but I was just so frustrated in setting up a development environment on my laptop.
No, dude,
Honestly,
honestly,
it was such a pain in the ass. I was like, God, you know, all these packages, these folders are in the. I was like, God, this is so stupid.
You know, if you use Visual Studio, it just works. You go file new program and it's all set up.
Anyhow, so I would want to fully lead into.
This episode has been brought to you by Microsoft Visual Studio.
and Media Center, right? Okay, guys, this is a lot of fun. Let's do our usual kind of capstone on our pod, which is our carve-outs, and then we'll bring it home and we'll come back next week. So, what's been top of mind for you this week? What have you been thinking about?
I'll start this week. It's my daughter Noah's second birthday.
Oh,
so I can't believe I've been a dad for 2 years. It's been on my mind. Like it was always a goal of mine, and it's cool to see her grow up, and it's been some of the most fascinating years of my life to see her like just develop. She's at the point now where she's stringing together kind of sentences that can communicate, and is I don't know, she's really like turned into like I'm seeing her personality over the past few months, and that's been really, really rewarding.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
Ahmad, why don't you go next?
You're already unmuted. I don't want to. I can't beat parenthood. So why don't you go?
Okay. So what's top of mind for me is that I'm very bad at work-life multitasking. Like I can multitask at work, I can multitask at life, but I cannot interleave things. So the reason this is top of mind is because I'm starting a vacation for Monday for a couple
Oh, nice.
And I'm actually going nowhere. And that's because I have a lot of things to do just from life to catch up on. And I'm always in this state where it's like work, neglect, you know, and then it's like take a couple weeks off, flush the pipeline. And like, there's got to be a better way to either outsource, care less, do it anyways, just be a better person. I don't know. It's not me yet. And so what's top of mind for me is this idea of how do I figure out work-life balance together? Because I don't have it.
I agree with this. This is very, very difficult.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I wonder if a lot of PMs relate to this because your PM to-do list it never ends, and then your personal shit tries to squeeze in there, and obviously gets prioritized at the bottom.
I feel like DZ probably has like a formula. Like if it's less than $2,000, then here's my credit card.
Actually, that's true.
Yeah.
Gonna task grab it. Gonna task grab it.
I feel like this is a super. I mean, I you know, we should bring some people on the pod. We should literally. This is one of those topics. Like, I literally feel like if I could mentally detach from work, right, at my convenience, my life would be dramatically better, right? Everything in my life would be dramatic. I could literally take any job in the world. But like, it's not just the interleaving, Samir, that's difficult. It's that like, even when you're with your family doing home stuff, your brain is still on the thing, right? And it could be there for a while if it's difficult or complicated.
Yeah.
By the way, I know someone who's really good at this. I haven't implemented this trick, but he told me what he does, Samir, is every day he has a 30-minute block that he makes sure he actually does, where he does one thing that is like in the personal bucket. And if there's nothing in the personal bucket or nothing that you could even do in the 30 minutes, then he just doesn't do work. Like he just takes the personal time because he makes sure that he has that personal time.
Well, that's a good tip, Ahmad. But what happens to me if I would schedule 30 minutes is I would sit down, start minute one of whatever task I'm doing, realize I'm so tired from the work I've been doing, and decide to just browse Reddit.
No, this is a real thing. This is a big. I mean,
but you're
this is hitting too close to home.
Yeah, exactly.
I know this exactly.
So I'll go on mine real quick. Actually, it stems from Avi's, yours as well. Like it's building a little bit on yours, which is, you know, again, I have 3 kids. I'm trying to teach them these things, and one of the things. Again, I don't espouse this very well. Like I'm not saying I do this, but it's one of those things I try to be mindful of. But one of the things I try to do for myself is to separate myself from the emotion. What I mean by that is you can conceive of things like I am angry, or you can conceive it like I am feeling anger, right? And for happiness, the same thing, right? And I feel like that is a really powerful. I wish this is one of those things I had thought about when I was a kid or was growing up, and I feel like it was one of those things where, like, if I could somehow convey that, you know, to my kids at an early age, it will like help them for life. You know, I don't know how to do it.
Oh, DZ, one way to do it, you should, one of the podcasts, you should walk us all through a guided meditation session through your philosophy. Like these things.
It's a great philosophy.
I think it's great. Actually, it's great.
Yeah,
it's tough to do, though, right?
You aren't your thoughts and feelings. Like you can recognize them and also not associate them with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
But by the way, I know this is carve-out section, but just to tie this back to product, there's a lot of times where you need to make dispassionate decisions, and this ability to step back. Like you are not the decision. You know, you are not the decision going your way versus someone else's way is not going to affect how you are. This idea of detachment is actually helpful in managing yourselves and your emotions, but also the product actually. So
Yeah.
By the way,
the real product skills are life skills, right? At the end of the day.
Yep.
Come on.
Another flavor of it that's been very, very useful for me in product management specifically is there's no such thing as good news or bad news. It's just news.
Mm.
We always have this, for me personally, like I always, like something enters my brain and I always feel the need to label it as good or bad in one of these two buckets. But if you actually just look at it objectively, it can be easy to see how something that looks like a disadvantage can actually be an advantage. Which, as you're dealing with obstacles and people telling you that this thing can't ship for another 6 months, it becomes actually pretty useful. The thing that is, so there are two things that are top of mind for me. One that is not relevant to the thing that we just talked about is I would love an episode where Samir just tells us what it's like to be a manager of DZ. Because there are so
that's a 2-line episode. Let him do what he wants, and then from time to time go fix the things that he broke. But in general,
exactly right.
Do what he wants.
That's exactly right. You covered the episode.
Yeah.
There were a lot of times where I'd be like, but DZ said, and then he'd be like, you don't want to know what DZ says. You know how many times I have to go fix what DZ says? So anyway, I'd love an episode, even if it's two lines. And the second thing is something that I've been thinking that's been top of mind for me is as a PM, there are a lot of times we have to make decisions. And by the way, I'm thinking about this a lot now as I'm trying to build something on the side, where you're basically taking something from 0 to 1. You have some gut instincts about the market. You have some gut insights. You have some, but you don't really know. And how do you fight that self-doubt? Like how do you, like, for me, it enters my mind and I try to like push it away. But it's like a natural thing when you're shipping a new feature. Like you're like, I don't know, is this thing going to work? Like I've told everybody that I think this thing's going to work. Like, is it going to work? And so it's been something that's been on my mind recently as I'm doing it for myself now. It's become more vocal in my brain.
That's okay. So first of all, we should wrap up. It's super late, but like that last one is a great extension from our last podcast. Last podcast, we talked about what are good problems. And originally this podcast was going to be like, once you find a good problem, how do you deliver a product for that problem? So I think, Ahmad, we'll come back to that idea and go through the thought processes and how we get it done.
I'm glad we didn't tell people to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon.
No, definitely not.
But
Definitely not.
were they to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, I think that would be great for
if they so choose. Right?
Yeah, if they choose.
Yeah, if they choose to like, subscribe.
And if they wanted to send Ahmad and I a message this week too.
Actually, right.
Or post it on Twitter or LinkedIn. Like who knows what these platforms are for?
Because
really.
I think one of the things is when we reach 10 million subscribers, which eventually we will, we can actually say we actually never told people to like, subscribe.
Definitely not.
And hit
In
the
fact,
bell
really
icon.
opposite, right? We were
told
emphatic.
them you only like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon if you want to.
That's right.
Like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. So yes, of course.
Okay. With that, guys, see you guys next week.
See ya.
See you guys next week.
See ya.